The name of this festival, Another World is Possible, is inspired by a 1994 letter that Subcomandante Marcos, the spokesperson of the Zapatistas' Indigenous liberation movement, wrote to the people and governments of the world. And it's that driving concept of this other world, this better world, that's at the cusp of our imagination that drives the vision of Eaton. And we wanted to, especially during this groundbreaking year of 2020 and the challenges that everyone has faced, to create a virtual convening space to bring together our community and share these stories of belonging and liberation. Eaton Workshop is now 6 years in the making and 2 years open at our locations in DC and Hong Kong. Our mission is to build platforms that offer conditions for the self and the collective to actualize. I've taken my biggest influences in life, grassroots activism, underground art and music, and holistic wellness, and channeled that into the properties that have under one roof cinema, artist studios, music venues, community radio stations, and I wanted this space to really reflect that sense of something more profound.
Partnering with the right people in the community to make sure that we create a space that's protected, despite all of the systemic challenges of any aged industry like this one.
Do you want to be estranged from the community, or do you want to be part of the community? And I think it's easy for a business to just have profit in mind, but if you want to be part of the community, you have to have other things that are part of that bottom line.
Physically, for folks having a space to hold their meetings, for people coming from around the country to have a place to stay when they bring their struggle to the halls of Congress. Having this as a hub, it's critical, not only for our local folks, but also for our national and international activist community.
Re-envision how it uses spaces, how it could be a space of generosity, how it could help revive imagination, how it wanted to be a space for art and culture and also for social change.
What Another World looks like is finding our passions and being able to live in it and allowing for those things to support community, to creatively live out our life and be in community with one another, be in deep and right relationship with one another.
Another world is possible. It's not just something that's far off that one day we'll achieve. Rich, poor, black, white, indigenous, any color, living self-actualization, that is the beginning of a fractal that spins outward and touches all of us. I think back on older relatives, elders in my life and ancestors and everything the struggle that they were engaged in, and it's because their process of liberation, everything they accomplished so that I can live in this way, that was their own liberation. They lived it themselves. Our realities are also different, whether we're here on K Street or we're in the mountains in Chiapas, or we're in the bayou in Louisiana or in the redwoods in California. We can accomplish so much in this lifetime.
With this festival, Another World is Possible, the films and the content are no longer just films. They become part of a larger social change movement and an imagining of a better world.
Latia Casey Camp Hornick, Environmental Ambassador for the Ponca Nation of Oklahoma. Want to say thank you to Eaton Workshops, Another World is Possible, and the support of Movement Rights. Movement Rights is a small nonprofit that helps us to support the rights of nature, and for the Ponca people, we have put that into a statute with the help of Movement Rights. And we also work hard on Indigenous rights and sovereignty and fight hard against the fossil fuel regime, doing the destructive work that they're doing against our Mother Earth. We know that this time is important for all of us to join together and to build this new system of belief that understands that we must live in harmony with all that is. And for those reasons, we're asking for your support. We'd like to ask you to donate to Movement Rights to help us to build even stronger movement together. And we would invite you as well to the December 5th showing of the Condor and the Eagle. And you get more information there. And I personally am asking you to sign a petition that Governor Stitt of Oklahoma is using as an attack on Indigenous sovereignty, another land grab on Indigenous people's territory. We need your help. Please join us. Thank you.
It's alive. It has life. This is why we are here. So that we can come and be reminded again as we gather around the stones that have been set here. As we light with the flame one more time. And we see it come alive. And we see the smoke lift. And we watch the directions that it moves. And we are reminded. Yes, this is like us. This is what we're doing. And we have brothers and sisters out there all over. And those who hear our voice, those who see the things that we are making with our hands, maybe they too can become inspired. Inspired? What's inspired? That inwardly, deep within, they remember that we are like a river that's moving. That in its motion, it's oxygen, the substance that gives life, that's moving in the water. And we are creatures in that water, and we are moving across this earth together. Ya-ay! Ya-oh! Ya-ay! 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 Yo-how! Bless the Eaton Festival. Let this be a beginning, a return to that which has been our beginning. And so here we are, gathered together, calling out, seeking this blessing. And so let it be. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Welcome to opening night of Another World is Possible. We give thanks to you for joining us, to our community for dedicating their stories to this festival, and to our team who have worked so hard to make this happen. I would like to thank Larry Littlebird for his blessing of our festival. What Larry said about this gathering being a beginning and a return is true in more ways than one. I first connected with artist and filmmaker Jesse Littlebird through our shared love of the Dharma Bums. 2 years ago, the founding team of Eaton, myself, Sebi, and Sheldon, and Jesse and our crew Eric and David departed LA for a cross-country road trip to DC. We were in search of another history of America through the lens of environmental justice struggles. This road trip paved the path to the opening of our first Eaton in DC later that year. Jesse's family welcomed us to Hamaatsa, their regenerative living center and wild sanctuary outside of Albuquerque. Larry walked us across the vast land, telling us about how rocks used to be stars. Deborah Littlebird gave us blue corn seeds, which Sebi later planted on a rooftop garden at Eaton, D.C. We met Houston activists fighting to protect their homes from oil refineries, Vietnamese farmers in New Orleans who prevented a landfill from being built in their neighborhood, broke bread with Sheldon's family near a former slavery plantation, and we were greeted by Sebi's mother in their homeland, the Piscataway Territory outside of D.C. That night, we visited the Martin Luther King Memorial, reflecting on the journey we took, weaving a curved trajectory through this complex land, ending with this profound monument to hope. This festival really is full circle. We open this festival and end this year in a vastly changed world. With a similar monument to hope, by sharing these stories of liberation. We're honored to present Jesse's evocative art film, The Land, which he filmed on the road trip. We'll then dive a bit deeper into the stories of 4 of the environmental justice activists we met on the road. After that, there will be an artist talk by Jesse of his recent paintings. Make sure to stay for our post-screening panel with the protagonists from the film and submit your questions on the comments section of the YouTube live stream. And with that, I present the screening of The Land.
Muis ania mis tayo awe ho hano ze guiata hos hano dues ze guiata I think burglaries, I'll call it a burglary, that has ever happened is when people who are different meet and they remain mental. If one is mental, usually the other is going to really resist that and fight with it and then maybe even become mental themselves. But the conditioning of colonization is a very civilized, well-planned, highly effective way in which someone has fooled themselves to thinking they can control something. Mm-hmm. And climate change is just a glimpse that there's no control, not by humans. The human control is in the heart, the places that we can feel. And what it makes you feel, if it makes you cry, that's great. Cry then, and find out what those tears are all about. If it makes
doesn't
you
matter if it's
fall on
true.
your knees, fall on your knees. But don't stand there and tell me you know.
I think for me it's just, a constant reminder of and the need of, power to shove it in your face, and to remind you that you are a conquered people, at least from their perspective, right? And this glorification of war and this, this idea of a nation that was by divine right and, sort of inevitable. And for me, like what I see is if this is the best they have to offer, like if they're proud of the world that they have built since then, that's a really sad place to be. In resistance to a demand by Mexican soldiers for a small cannon held by the colonists. Like that's all they have to point to. This is America's, this is what it built. So that's the monument. This is the Houston Ship Channel, and I think it's just sort of a good way of beginning to look at the work that needs to be done. It's not just environmental education. Like it's history, it's cultural, and it's remembering. It's like, is this what we want to be proud of in 100 years? Is this what we want to talk about and like bring our children to? Like, really, this? Not me. Yeah.
Hos hamo duesse guiada. Hos tua Americana.
Bác có thấy nhiều dầu hay gì nước bác dầu loan nữa nó sẽ bác đi ra sâu không?
Sâu lắm, đi xa lắm, đi gần tới mobile luôn.
Vậy hả? Okay. So he went further, he went pretty far out, right? Deep into the Gulf, and he said that they could see like oil and sheens of oil, right? And then he worked for several weeks, and of course, NOAA, the National Oceanic Administration, they closed part of the Gulf down, right? And so he didn't do any more fishing that year. No oyster harvesting because they shut down the oyster reefs later that fall, and then also no shrimping the rest of that year. Yeah. And then he said since then it's been very, very like sparse fishing, particularly about the oyster reefs. Yeah, it's really decimated the displaced fishermen who harvest oysters. See, BP was like a huge environmental disaster, and you're not only talking about impacts to the water and fisheries and habitats, but people's health, because people are part of the ecosystem environment, right? Sometimes that's not well understood or acknowledged, right? So, but there's been folks like fishermen and other coastal residents who became sick. Yeah, but it's very hard because we don't have like a very strong public health system in the Gulf, let alone like occupational environmental health. So some folks, it was difficult to get the proper medical diagnosis, let alone treatment. So there's a lot of concerns, and the thing is, like, for communities who, like he was saying that about the fishing community in South Carolina, those of us who depend on like healthy natural resources environment, where the environment is being degraded or disappearing, those communities will too. You see what I'm saying? Yeah, it would. Yeah, particularly those who's like have like a really strong connection to the environment. And I'll use example going back to like an oyster reef. An oyster reef is like a habitat for oysters. It also where other species, marine life grows. It filters the water, so it helps keep the water clean. But it's also a source of livelihood for many fishermen and fishing communities. And if those reefs like are not healthy, productive, and decimated, those communities will gradually go away too.
Well, I know in talking with elders that there was always supposed to be a time when we would fight the two black snakes, right? And that one black snake would be easier to kill than the other. And we also knew that that was the time when people would have to make a decision about where things were going to go. We never, as far as I know, we never got the answer of what the decision was going to be. I think it's still being played out, but everything that I've seen that definitely falls in line with that. And I can see like the seventh generation of people like standing up. Like I think it's my kids, man, because they're tough. Like my daughter's suing the government for inaction on climate change. She's 14 years old.
Oh, she's one of the plaintiffs on that case.
Yeah, I mean it's like all these, but it's not just them. Think about the kids that are working on gun issues. It doesn't matter. Like you see these kids standing up and taking control. I feel like me personally, I'm just in line holding that space for them to come through. Like I think this all started way before any of us were thought of, and I think it'll go way past that, right? Standing Rock, like us, was just another link and another part of that protection that's been happening for generations upon generations.
It's your feet making marks on the earth. And somebody else can see it and go, oh, who was this? Well, that's who we are as tribal people around the world. We can find out about others by the print they leave on the earth. That's what's so beautiful. It's not in our heads. You're not going to learn it in a book. You're not going to learn it because somebody's got a PhD. I have a PhD. It's a post hole digger down there in where my tools are.
That's how you learn. Yeah, that is a beautiful thing about belonging to tribal people. You can't leave that memory behind. I don't care what happens. Something comes along and it shocks you. And your eyes open, your ears open, you feel something differently, and you don't know what it is exactly, and you carry it. You got something in your pocket. You don't even know what it is.
Don't even know what it is.
You put your hand down in your pocket and you go, there it is, there it is. What the heck is that? What is that? And little at a time, it just begins to come back. The memory isn't lost. It's not about something in your mind. It's a feeling. And when you meet people, it's not like you're thinking, it's your feeling.
Close to the river, the Rio Grande.
The Rio Grande?
Yes, in Albuquerque. It runs through all of the pueblos, most of the pueblos in this area, and we all, have a deep connection to the river. It's our water source. It's also a place of prayer for us, cleansing and giving back. So I'm part of this group called the Pueblo Action Alliance that came out of Standing Rock. The group needed to find a place to kind of like take all the donations and have a system for that. And so now that Standing Rock, isn't there, Pueblo Camp isn't there anymore, we try to do our work in the communities now. So all the water protectors that went to Standing Rock, we have this connection. We all came together for whatever reason, but it's to protect the water. And I believe it's very important that we also still protect the water within us. The advice I would give would be to protect yourselves. And so going in prayer, put a shield around yourself before you get to that environment, because you don't know what you'll face there. And also to leave it there before you go back home to your community, because I think sometimes there's some difficult things that go on when you're at the front lines, and you want to be safe for yourself and for your family. So also kind of like uncloaking that and leaving it there. You're gonna go home with the ideas and inspiration and awareness, but you don't want to go home with the negativity that you might also encounter. You know, having that spiritual connection or component or respect for one another, we can have those hard discussions and leave them be and still go out as friends, you know, conquer the world together.
I love what you were saying about how you went to Standing Rock to pray, and how praying, being there, was a form of being on the front lines, but you had to protect your family. That's why you were cooking on the day of the attacks. Could you tell us more about that?
Okay.
Again, that balance of how you were on the front lines but also were a mother.
Yes, that is so cool, because we went to Standing Rock to pray. I didn't go to fight. I didn't go to put myself in a vulnerable position because I have family. I'm a mother of 6, and I took 5 of my family members up there to pray, and we took our cornmeal, we went to the sacred fire, and we prayed because of the beautiful unity of everyone coming together, all colors, all tribes. It was so beautiful to be in that position and to just have this spiritual being. It wasn't conducive to being to fighting. You know, I didn't want to put myself in the position of getting, you know, hurt because I have family to take care of. And so the way I did it is through prayer and through cooking. I cooked my traditional tortillas and cheese back from home, and our water protectors from Pueblo Camp just loved that. The piece of like remembering home cooked meals, well, they had been up there for months sacrificing, was healing for them, and it was healing for me to be able to offer that to them. And so that was my way of helping out.
That's the problem with pipelines anyway, right? Once they go through, you can't build anything on top of it. You can't do anything else with that land. Like it's not theirs, but it might as well be because you're stuck, you know. And if there's a leak, you know, according to the laws the way they stand now, that would still be their being the landowner's responsibility to clean up that leak. And again, in this case, we're dealing with like the worst leaking company there is in all of the United States. Energy Transfer Partners is the same company that was putting in the Dakota Access Pipeline, and it caused all the trouble around Standing Rock. This right here is the Bayou Bridge Pipeline construction. We're in where we at? We're in Indian Bayou, Louisiana right now. Not that far from camp. Camp's just a couple miles that way. The basin's like our biggest worry, honestly. We lose about a football field of land every hour in South Louisiana because of climate change, because of these pipelines that go through and they take away the wetlands, so there's nothing to soak up the water. So we have a lot of flooding. You know, we had I had 2 floods in my house within the last year and a half. So that's an issue, of course. It's all intimidation. They want you to see them. They want you to be afraid of them. That kind of thing doesn't happen in South Louisiana.
Yeah.
Like to see all of these people come out and say like in this one voice that they don't want it. And that's what's so kind of hurts my heart, I guess, is that to have all these people come out and say that they don't want it, and to still have this government or this system that's not listening to them or paying attention, tells me without doubt that we've got to change the system from the bottom up. If we're going to have any hopes of actually affecting change and protecting this planet, then it has to go further than just one pipeline. It has to be more about changing the system. Some of us were fighting long before that, and a lot of us will be fighting long after that. But I do know that Standing Rock was very special because that it did light that fire in a lot of people that wasn't there before, but it also stoked the fire of the people who've always had it, which is mainly Indigenous people, because our job is to protect this land. We always know that, right? So that's part of what, when we bought this land over here for the camp and the pipeline was running through it, we knew we were going to have to fight this pipeline back. But the truth matter is we bought that land so that we could raise chickens, so that we could have organic food co-ops. We want to get the kids in there from all the Indigenous communities all around and show them like traditional learning and things like that, and to really try to help them come out of this way of being, in which this like way of being in the world that's shameful and destructive or whatever. But in order to do that, we have to create space for that. So yeah, we have to fight this with everything we have in order to say no. But it's also about, what are you saying yes to? And so part of what Loy La Vie Camp was created for was to find that yes in the midst of the no. So that's what we're doing.
There will be hundreds of us. There will be thousands of us. You will not be able to move in this easement at all. Brothers and sisters! Got it! Stop choking her!
Stop choking her!
We need you here now! We need you now!
So here is called Versailles, and this was all flooded. They just redid everything, but yeah, all this was all Vietnamese, pretty much African American and Vietnamese. Most Vietnamese were fishermen, shrimpers, you know. So they already submit all the paperwork to sponsor them over. Just waiting. It takes up to có thể 10 năm, over 10 năm.
Yeah, well, 12 years.
At least 12 years, yep.
But then her children already grow up.
Yeah, you know, whatever, but as long as they make it to America, you know. But they already submitted all the paperwork for it. 43 years in the community, yes. And he's been through landfill, Katrina, gas plant now, it's just everything. Trash.
Do you mind telling us again what she said about why they put it near us?
What Miss Luan said was that why do they always seem to put the landfill and the gas plant near our community? We don't want it, get away from us.
No, so for my organization, our mission is to really help like protect and advocate, defend, right? To keep these like long-standing livelihoods in communities that helped build the Gulf Coast, because fishing goes back all the way in the 1700s in Louisiana. So, see, BP was like a huge environmental disaster, and you're not only talking about impacts to the water and fisheries and habitats, but people's health, because people are part of the ecosystem environment. And you know, like looking at the fishermen, they're like, many of them are just barely hanging in there, you know? I mean, they used to like harvest oysters 6-7 months a year before BP, and now last year is whittled down to just several days. Yeah. Barely hanging in there. Yeah, he was a fisherman in one of the fishing villages. Hồi đó là bác ở tỉnh nào?
Kiên Giang.
Kiên Giang, yeah. Cũng đi biển, gia đình cũng đi biển, yeah. His family were like long-term fishermen. Yeah. And then he said since then it's been very, very like sparse fishing, particularly about the oyster reefs. Yeah, it's really decimated displaced fishermen who harvest oysters. So it's very directly tied to his livelihood, his way of life, you know. And he's been very active in my organization for many years now. Yeah.
You know, it's hard to pinpoint it, but if you grow up in a city like Houston, you know, you're just kind of immersed in oil and gas, petro culture. And my parents actually, I was telling Sebi, you know, come from another similar place in West Texas called Big Spring in Forsan, and it's, you know, smack dab in the middle of the Permian Basin, where there's been drilling since the 30s and 40s, and even to this day, you know, it continues. So incidentally, like, it's just been in my life, you know, since oil and gas really has been a part of this country.
Yeah.
And growing up near the refineries and the chemical plants, we're about 2 miles from the beginning of the Houston Ship Channel, and it stretches for 17, 18 miles, but just on land. It goes further out into the water, so you have all these big boats and barges, you know, and then it circles around Galveston Bay. So, you know, this is ever present, and it's a part of, you know, everything here. So, and I mean, you can imagine how much influence the port has on the city. And, you know, it really became a city because of the discovery of oil nearby, and the development of the combustible engine, and the world wars. You know, so this place has just sort of always been at the epicenter of war and discovery and conquest.
Yeah.
And it continues. You know, it's a really interesting place.
It's a big intersection.
Soil is contaminated. You know, all of the chemicals and runoff that happened during the storm got flushed out into the bay and into the Gulf. So now it's polluting, you know, the seafood and, you know, all of the folks that rely on that for jobs or sustenance or recreation or sport. You know, now they have to think about whether or not it's safe to eat the seafood, or how much to eat. And that almost happened even with Ike. You know, what this storm was different, because it had already made landfall near Corpus Christi, and it just hovered over us, so it was just raining from above. So we've seen now many different ways that the storms can impact this area.
Right.
And they're not prepared for any of them. Like, I don't know that you can be. I mean, you're going to raise all of these industries 20 feet up, put them on stilts like they want to do the homes? No.
Not going to happen.
You're going to build big-ass levees? Like, that's not going to protect them from, you know, 50 inches of rain from above. You're going to build a big shed over? No, it's like there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do except, you know, pray that that doesn't happen. So any of the projects that they proposed don't fully protect the facilities or the people around them. It's like, this is what we built. You know, this is the world that we made. And they're proud of it.
It's their justification, basically.
Even in the face of, like, all of the problems that it's caused and all of the death and sickness that it's caused. It's like, that's all they have to point to. This is America's, you know, this is what it built. So that's the monument. This is the Houston Ship Channel. And I think it's just sort of a good way of beginning to look at the work that needs to be done. It's not just environmental education. Like, it's history, it's cultural, and it's remembering, you know? It's like, is this what we want to be proud of in 100 years? Is this what we want to talk about and like bring our children to? Like, really this? Not me.
Yeah.
Jesse Rain Littlebird is a Laguna Quechua Pueblo artist, painter, writer, and film director from Santa Fe, New Mexico. His storytelling through various media are rooted in Pueblo Indian heritage of oral tradition and an upbringing in a creative household. Littlebird's provocative paintings have gained recognition in the New Mexico art scene, having been exhibited solo and group shows since 2018. The painting posed questions such as, what would a genocide look like with vibrant compositions of primary colors? How could death of an internal being be represented as sacred and placed on a pedestal, martyred and sainted by the artists? Littlebird is the Sundance Institute Full Circle Fellow, Andy Warhol Foundation recipient, and board member of Hamaatsa, an Indigenous Learning Center nonprofit.
Gwatsi, greetings to everyone around the world, in Hong Kong, in Africa, in Washington, D.C., East Coast, West Coast of this little place we call the United States of America. I'm Jesse Rain Littlebird, coming to you from my studio here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I just want to first of all thank Kat Lowe, founder of Eaton, Sheldon Scott, and Sebi Medina Tayak, who've become like a family to me. They were with me the whole trip for the making of the land, stories of the people. And it was a really poignant time in the Trump era. And from out of that, I believe Eaton's vision of this festival, Another World is Possible, is really apparent within the film. So the land was realized from the very beginning when Kat Lowe approached me, and she's like, first of all, she said, "Do you want to go on a road trip?" And I was like, hell yeah, I've always wanted to go on a road trip from coast to coast. That's been a dream of mine. And if we make a movie along the way, that'll be beautiful as well. My father, Larry Littlebird, gave us blessing. He blessed the tops of our head to give us pure intentions and pure thoughts, and he also blessed the bottoms of our feet so that everywhere we walked across this land, it would be in a good way. And he blessed our hands, so everyone's hands that we shook, that we would receive from them fully, and we would also give to them fully as well. One of the biggest, appalling parts of the journey was definitely in Houston with Brian, but also seeing the work that's being done where, as a community, and that community gets added to every day, it being one of the fastest growing cities in the United States. When we went down into Houston, seeing people's houses that were sandwiched in between these refineries was very eye-opening to me. It was a way to see, man, people are living like this, and I think we like to look at these fictional films that are based in the future, and you know what? The future is already here with a lot of that. It's already pretty apocalyptic dystopian over there. There's already being people displaced every day in America by these big energy corporations. And along this journey, the way I really wanted to frame the film was not for it to be too information heavy, but I really wanted to get to know these activists more personally and really just have their voices on the forefront. So not a lot of it was directed in like, give us statistics, give us numbers on things. It was more like I wanted the passion to come forth, and I wanted it to be seen in the eyes and heard with their voice. So I really wanted to lift that up. one thing for me personally that happened along the road was, in each little stop, I found a tree, a different type of tree, a different type of plant. Starting in California with a palm tree, and I touched that palm tree. Then to like New Mexico at my homeland, the pinon tree, and touching that pinon tree. And then down in the south, touching a cypress tree. And then in Sheldon's land, in Gullah Geechee land, looking through the rice fields, but then seeing these giant cypress trees that so many men died to cut these trees. And for what? I mean, it was a very powerful moment, being there in Gullah Geechee land, of people that were displaced, of people that are still there. I can relate it to myself, from my Karisin heritage and all the way back to the Tano people, who everyone says are extinct. You know, everywhere you go in New Mexico, oh, the Tano are extinct. And I'm still here. And when I hug my brother Sheldon, he's still here as well. So by the end of the trip, when we reached Washington, D.C., in the heart of the beast, that I called it, but which is now the home of Eaton, I think we were a little exhausted emotionally from the toll of the road, and also just hearing so much struggle and pain throughout this nation. But out of that, what really was born was this optimism and this hope and what I would call faith, truly cultivated out of community connection and realizing that we just connected a bunch of dots, and that Eaton can be this community space that where all these dots come together, and it's really this beacon of light in this darkness that is Washington, D.C. And I really took that personally and strove to bring that back to my community in New Mexico, as did, I believe, everyone that was involved with the project. And in that, I think that is the testament of the film, and it's a very hopeful and very bright future. I didn't want the film to be just completely like despaired, and that's why I kind of ended it with my dad's end of his interview, and also ending it with the shot on the road, looking out into the horizon. And I think that's what Eaton really represents and what it is, and that's what this festival is. Another world is possible. So upon completion of the film, I got back to New Mexico, and I had a fire lit under me, and I was really exploring this idea of where art and activism intersect. And I really took that upon myself to have my voice amplified, and the medium that I chose was one of the oldest forms of art ever, and something that I think is really related to my heritage and culture, being from the Southwest, being Pueblo Indian, being the ones that have been the graffiti writers, the ones that have been writing on the walls, been telling the stories, and exploring that in my painting. And I think most of my work is energy driven. It's emotionally driven. It's driven by stories. It's driven by everything that I've heard and grown up, and trying to translate that as a language two-dimensionally is very exciting for me. My major influences that I borrow from, number one, has always been my dad, and he's really the person that's taught me to be not just the artist that I am, but the human being that I am, and those two are, I think, mutually exclusive. So my recent body of work and the current show that I have at Nopal Gallery here in Albuquerque, New Mexico, really explored this idea of a collective feeling that we had in the year 2020, dealing with this hyper-reality, all these anxieties, all these fears, all these different viewpoints, and bringing that in and deconstructing it and bringing it all back together, fracturing these characters, and a lot of the work was built out of my own personal journey as an artist, that it's not just what you're making, it's not just what you're creating, it's the lifestyle that you're living, the energy that you're putting out into the world translates onto the work that you're creating. So when the film was made in 2018 and we were speaking with these artists, personally for me what I saw was a lot of people that weren't activists for a moment, they're activists for a lifetime. And that's what activism is to me. And so in that, if you're going to be an artist and you're going to be an activist, and those are going to be married together, you really have to think about what your art is serving, you know, as a purpose. Where is it going forward? After the trip and after the film and being connected with Eaton, I was really springboarded into my career painting, and just being a multidisciplinary artist in general. And out of that, my vision for it is to continually to build the model that is Hamaatsa, the nonprofit that I'm board member on, and have it be a model for the activist life. You know, what does it mean to take care of yourself and take care of your community, and have that be completely land-based, because we are land-based people. So the hashtag land back is really big right now, and that's where a lot of my activism lies. I would like to change that hashtag, actually. You know, I would like to change that hashtag to land-based. And at Hamaatsa, we are proving that. We are realizing that. That is becoming an actuality. Hamaatsa, the word, means continuum. And that means that it is something that is happening right now, that is going to be happening in the future. And it takes all of that, and it is a very liminal space in which that can be realized. And so by supporting me in my career, in my journey as an artist, you are directly supporting that, because every ounce of my energy that isn't put into putting stuff out is being brought back in to that place and that space that is very important to me.